Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast where people leaders share their side of the story. We talk about the challenges they're facing, how they're addressing them, and what changes they hope to see as the workplace evolves. This podcast is sponsored by All Voices, the all-in-one employee relations platform. Hello, and welcome to HR Voices. I'm your host, Rebecca Taylor, and I'm here with Laura McLand, the VP of Human Resources at Sun Holdings. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate you inviting me. I really enjoyed speaking with you and looking forward to this conversation.
I'm excited too. And I think it's funny because we just finished prepping for this episode and I feel like we were just having so many good conversations that I was like, I wish we were recording already, but now we can kind of like bring more of the magic back now that we're officially in it. And so for those who are new here, HR Voices explores real and fabricated anonymized employee relations scenarios through the lens of experienced HR and people leaders just like Laura. So we're going to evaluate a realistic workplace situation and demonstrate how we'd assess risk, apply judgment, and design practical responses. So I'll always say our goal here is to reveal how strong HR leaders think when they're facing ambiguity. We're not necessarily looking for a single correct answer because, as we've learned in HR, that very rarely exists. A lot of operating in the gray. So, Laura, I appreciate you being game to chat through these scenarios with me.
Sure. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Are you ready for it? I'll read it
Yep.
out for you.
I'm
All
ready.
right. So we're calling this one the exit interview bombshell. In an exit interview, a departing employee discloses for the first time that she witnessed her manager stealing from the company's petty cash over the past year. She estimates the total at several $1,000s. She says she didn't report it earlier because she feared retaliation and needed her job. HR now holds a disclosure it cannot ignore, but the witness is leaving and may be unavailable or unwilling to cooperate in a formal investigation. The manager has a strong performance record. So now HR must launch an investigation with limited evidence, a departing witness, and a subject who has no idea anything is coming. So before we jump into any type of conclusion or action plan, Laura, what stands out to you as the most risky or unclear in this scenario?
Well, we definitely need some more information, obviously. And we also need to do an investigation. What is the cause of what's going on with this employee? Why haven't they communicated with HR now or before now and waited till the departing message to let us know what's going on? So that's what we want to delve at is on this particular location or in because we have restaurants. So did they even have the information available to reach out to us? Why did they not feel comfortable reaching out to us? And so that's important also. We also, of course, want to follow up with that employee and let them know that they can speak with us confidentially and that we are going to investigate that.
Yeah. The investigation is always kind of the part where it's like, I always feel like I'm on an episode of CSI. Like, I'm like, let me find the clues. Let me figure out, let me talk to some people. Let me find some evidence and see what's going on. So who are some of the people that you'd want to start to talk to as you kind of begin your investigation process?
So 100% with that employee because they know the witnesses and that's going to be part of our question to them is did anybody else know or was anybody else aware that this was going on? And so that helps. We can actually start speaking with those witnesses and of course the manager as well. So we want to make sure doing an all-encompassing investigation. Also, we want to go up a level. So even does the district manager, we want to do research on the finance side of things. Did we even notice that local restaurant or location was having financial issues? And if not, how did we not see that?
Yeah, there's a paper trail somewhere, right? Like the
Exactly.
petty cash has been going somewhere. And if you can't figure out where it's been going, then the roads might lead to where this departing employee says it does.
Exactly right. You know, that's
Yeah.
what HR does is that we're part of we put our CSI hats on, right? And so we kind
Yeah.
of investigate and you never know where that's going to lead. Sometimes it's an employee who is disgruntled and, you know, they want to say something that's parting that may not be entirely true, but we won't know that until we do an investigation and start talking to other witnesses and doing that analysis.
Yeah. Now, how, in terms of other evidence too, because I know we were talking a little bit again before this, I know you're talking restaurants, I come from retail. So usually in those types of environments, there's security footage and things like that, right? So how do you incorporate accessing that? I would work with loss prevention just to kind of start with that process to start to see, is there, can you see anything? So how would you kind of partner with that to get more of that security type evidence?
Yeah, and that's exactly part of that investigation is working with risk. That's part of what's under their purview of getting access to those cameras. Part of that investigation is in asking that employee when, what days did it occur? And so that we
Mm,
can narrow down the research on that footage and see if we can see where that is occurring and also where those cameras are in that particular location so that we can see from different angles and also review that on several different days and see if maybe it was an anomaly of a certain situation that we may not know about, but also researching up, is this an ongoing issue at that restaurant?
yeah. Yeah, that's the note that's interesting in this scenario. And these are fabricated, right? So we have to take some of what it says with a grain of salt. But the statement is that her manager was stealing from the company's petty cash over the past year. So to
Right.
me, that implies like pattern, right? And I'm with you when you mentioned, did we notice anything about the finances of that location that would flag something that didn't look right? Because I know petty cash is petty cash, but there's still a log of like what goes in and what goes out, right? It still needs to be accounted for.
Well, 100%. And so, what we also see sometimes in these scenarios is maybe someone, a manager, will do it at a smaller amount. So, they're pocketing $20 or something. And,
Hmm.
oh, okay, nobody noticed. So, I'm going to do a little bit more and a little bit more until they get a little bit greedy of pocketing sticky fingers of that petty cash. And then it definitely comes up to a level that we notice it. But we also want to make sure that, again, if an employee saw it the first time, that's when we need to catch it and not wait till it continues throughout a whole year. And then when they're departing, now,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, this is so I can say this because I don't work at this company anymore. So if you can't answer this question, this is completely fine. This is not a gotcha situation. It's not a gotcha podcast. But I
okay.
know when I was in retail and we would have, we would see employees stealing. A lot of times we worked with like luxury cosmetics. So sometimes they'd be stolen from, from the stock areas and all of that. And if we got a report and we saw, we'd let them do it a few times before we would actually kind of confront them and begin because you're looking for repeated patterns, you're looking for repeated behavior. And if you don't see them doing it more than once, you still have to address it. But we would see like, is this a habit? Because people tend to get bold. If they get away with it once or twice, then they start to steal more and bigger things. Um, so, is that something you can relate to? Or what do you think about just that kind of approach, I guess, in
Well,
general?
in sometimes people think I'm entitled. I work here, I
Hmm.
deserve it, whatever the scenario is. And unfortunately, that isn't the case. So stealing is stealing, whether it's $20 or $200.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, whenever they've done it once, they seem more confident that it's okay and I can do it again and again. And so we want to make sure that when it happens the first time, that's when it's addressed with that employee. Where did they think that that was okay? And also, make some decisions based on what occurred with that situation. And especially with restaurants, sometimes people feel that, oh, we have extra food left over. It's okay to go ahead and take it home. And that's not
Mm.
the case. We have to account for and it's not just okay, free food and you can take it. And sometimes you can see in a restaurant, maybe some people will work or maybe a cook. They may prepare a little extra at the end of the evening, preparing that, oh, I can just take it home. And so that's why
Mm.
we don't want that to occur. We only want to make exactly what's ordered and then account for that food cost at the end of the day.
Yeah. Makes sense because you're trying to figure out, your loss and, volume and quantity for supplies you need to order versus what actually gets consumed. And if that is tainted because some of that stuff is disappearing, then you're not able to get an accurate understanding of the supplies your restaurant's going to need.
Exactly right. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about, the person who's departing. I love that you said that you want to ask them for witnesses because I don't think they're going to be very helpful in this investigation. They're out, right? Like they've given their exit interview. They've kind of just dropped a bomb and left. So, hopefully they can give some names of witnesses. So if they do, I imagine you talk to the witnesses. What if they don't? Like, what if they're like, I'm not going to throw anybody else under the bus because this person sounds like they were fearful, right? Fearful of retaliation. So now I would understand if they're fearful to not give the names of people because then they're worried that they're going to get in trouble. So what do you do if they don't give you witness names?
That's fine. We actually continue that investigation. So we actually reach out to other employees that have worked with that manager just proactively to see if,
Hmm.
hey, if there's a situation that they've seen, because we still want to investigate any particular scenario where it has a GM or a manager that's having those sticky fingers. And so as we talk with different employees, even departing employees and current employees, they still talk to each other. There's still text
Yeah.
messages. They're still going on. And so I know that we can continue that investigation with other people. And also, again, looking at that footage. So I know it's been over a year, but maybe we can look at the last month. Usually there's a final incident. That's a really big thing in HR is what was the
Yeah.
final incident? And so there was something happened recently whenever that person departed that definitely caused this particular situation to say, this is it. I'm checking out. And what was that? What was the final day? Was there a disagreement with that manager? We want to investigate that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. There's usually that straw that breaks the camel's back, right? There's
Mm.
that final thing.
Yeah, that's it. It is not usually like in the middle of the shift when everything's been running well. There's usually something that just said, I'm done. And that's what
Yeah.
we need to investigate for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, so what's the risk of moving too quickly to speak to this manager? And what's the risk of moving too slow? Because in this scenario, manager has a high performance record. They have no idea that anything's coming, right? So like what's the risk of going right to them and moving to them really quickly? And then what's the risk of waiting to approach them?
Well, sure. And it depends on the scenario. So we definitely need to look at it from, we don't want to go too fast. We don't want to make assumptions and make a decision that is too rash. So, but we also don't want to go too slow because it's going to cost us money if this manager is continuing to do this. So we have to be very diligent, do our due diligence, working with very quickly within 24, 48 hours, doing that research, trying to review the video, doing all of those conversations with the employees. And so that we do address it quickly. We also have hotlines. So, for instance, if the terminated employee is still communicating with current active employees, we want to make sure that they communicate and feel comfortable just talking to HR proactively. So that sometimes, and that does occur. Hey, so and so left, but I wanted to tell you what's going on. And so that they also feel comfortable doing that as well. So we do get it from several different areas, not just from the departing employee, but then as they are leaving, maybe they're still doing the communication, and then those people are reaching out to HR. We want to
Yeah.
make sure that
Yeah.
the employee that's departing understands that we took their comment in the report seriously, that we didn't just brush it off and say, oh, they're leaving. We're not going to worry about it. No, we're
Yeah.
actually definitely going to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of worrying about it, so when as you're kind of working through these conversations, are there any assumptions that you have to be careful to not make before you gather like more evidence, right?
Oh, absolutely. So you want to make sure that you ask some open-ended questions so that the employee feels comfortable giving you the answers. Because also when you do that investigation, you may find additional information with the other employees that the original employee didn't provide, but that you end up going down some different rabbit holes of thinking, oh, I didn't realize this was also going on, or they were not working their full hours, or they were leaving maybe a restaurant manager list for a time period. So there seems to be other issues that could be going on. And so we also want to make sure that we fully explore what that situation is. And maybe it's not just financial. There's sometimes other things that are going on as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There's usually, this I think like this employee said that she feared retaliation and that's why she didn't say something. And it kind of like I think that I would have to try hard to not assume that that's just something that they said and versus something that could be a real threat, that the manager could have threatened that, right? Because it says that the manager has a strong performance record, but that can mean anything. It could really mean anything when you're really kind of digging into then like, okay, well, how do you interact with your staff and what do they know and understand about what it's like to work with you?
Exactly. And employees need to feel comfortable communicating and who can they communicate with comfortably and not fear retaliation. I could see where the employee would fear that obviously they can't go to the manager and say, stop stealing. I mean, that would that wouldn't go well for their career. But they also need
Yeah.
to know that they have advocates on their side, so that whenever they do have a concern that they need to bring to management, they do have avenues to be able to do that. And so, especially with, of course, there is going to be some retaliation factor. I would think that they would think that that would
Yeah.
occur, but also we have options that we can actually, like in our situation, we can actually transfer an employee if they feel more comfortable to another restaurant, and where they're
Mm,
not. And so even as we address that manager, maybe that situation, and they say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable working there anymore, we can actually transfer them if that's something that they want to do, where they like working for the company. They just can't work at that location anymore. So we also
yeah.
facilitate that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a good option for people who are kind of like, if it turns out that the manager, is whatever the situation might be, right? But if they just don't want to work for that manager, if you can move them to a different spot because it's their choice, I think that's a really, really good way to kind of approach it for what it's worth, because then it's like people feel less trapped probably and maybe a little bit more valued. That's what I would think.
Exactly. 'Cause if they're a good employee, we want to make sure and retain them. But then we also
Yeah.
want to definitely look into that manager as well.
Yeah.
Are they as good
Yeah.
as you think they are? Some of their numbers may be good, but obviously we have this situation that we need to address with them.
Yeah. So how do you approach this conversation with this manager? They're like, I've got a great performance record. I'm walking on sunshine. I'm good. How do you approach this conversation with them when they have no idea that there could be anything wrong?
We do. Well, part of that is that due diligence. So, do we see any financial situations? Whenever we do that research, do we have any camera footage first? So we do that, look into that to see. Okay, if those are some of the things that we need to address with that manager. So, if we don't see any financial situations, if we see everything looks in alignment, and if we don't see anything on video, we're still going to, of course, interview the GM. But why
Yeah.
would the employee think this? Where did this come from? Could it be that they were taking cash to the bank and they saw them put it in their pocket, and they think, oh, okay, it's going in their pocket, not at the
They're
bank.
stealing.
And we can say,
Yeah.
yeah, and just that perception of stealing, and then maybe it's just not actually occurring. Or if it is occurring, then of course we have to address that with that manager as well. They can continue. So we do address it from both ways, but also we do want to do our due diligence because we don't want to accuse a manager without having that background information of, hey,
Yeah.
we've made our research and this is what we're seeing. But we always give them of course, the opportunity to respond to any allegations like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you're saying that you'd talk to the employee, to the person in question either way, but you'd want to do your diligence first to kind of know, like, okay, we heard this, we took a look to see is it true or not, or, as much as we can find some evidence, and then you lead the conversation based on what evidence you find or don't find. I like that you're talking to them either way, and it's not just they're in the background and all of a sudden people know things about them that they don't know, and then that can become a factor in whether or not they're viable for promotion later, just because it can put just sort of seeds, it can plant the wrong seeds in the wrong circumstances.
Exactly. We actually have documents that we use for the accuser, the accused, and the witnesses. And so we always start out with the same questions, but then, of course, evolve as we're talking to each in particular person. And where does that go? So we start with the basics of, okay, what did you see? What didn't you see? Did you experience this? Those kind of things. And that's very typical in HR with having that documentation as you do investigations. But then also, where is this going to lead? And sometimes it definitely leads into other areas you hadn't expected.
Yeah. Yeah. So now at a certain point, you have to make a decision, right? So you do your investigation, you talk to the employee. If it is true or not true that they're stealing, how do you determine what action to take with that employee? Like, let's assume it is true that they are. I know there's different policies for different places. Stealing's usually a little bit more of a zero tolerance policy than some others, but how do you kind of what is the flow between confirming that the thing that they're accused of happened and then taking action on that?
Yeah, we definitely move quickly,
Yeah.
make that decision, and based on that background and research and investigation, make that decision based on that information for that general manager. Is their career about to end with our company? And that sometimes needs to occur, or is it a perception situation? And we need to coach that manager. And also, we
Hmm.
want to make sure that employees feel comfortable going to their manager for different situations. And so, for instance, as soon as this employee saw it the first time, obviously they didn't feel comfortable going to that general manager. Why didn't they go to the district manager? Or why didn't they reach out, to HR that time?
Yeah.
They felt that retaliation, and we want to make sure that that doesn't incur. So we also not only do we count or coach the manager to be more approachable from their employees, but then we also make sure that information is disseminated throughout our restaurants that has we have a posting or a poster that has, hey, employees, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to the HR department. This is the communication. Here's a phone number, hotline, and email address. We want to make sure that the general manager has that posted in the restaurant, because if it
Yeah.
isn't posted, maybe that's an indication as well that they don't
Yeah.
want them to reach out. And so we also speak with the district manager as well and make sure that whenever they're going to the restaurants, that they see that posting up there and make sure it's available for the employees.
Yeah, that's such a good point, is sort of if the poster's not there when it should be, why is that? Is it an oversight? Is it an intentional hiding of information? There's so many different, again, the CSI hat comes on. I'm like, ooh, let me go down that rabbit hole and figure out what's going on.
Exactly. Well, the hosters, they get kind of worn in a restaurant because there's all the
Yeah.
cooking and things like that going on, but they need to
Yeah.
have a fresh one or make sure it's up all the time.
Yeah. It's easy to let them get buried in the corner by accident when they're shipped to you and you forget to hang them, but it's still like you still have to hang them.
Oh, and yes, and who reads all those, right? But so we
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
that it's, part of the code has pictures and things like that. So it is a
Yeah.
must. And all the different other posters that they have to put up in the restaurants, especially with the restaurants, it's like,
Yeah. Health
how
codes and
to have
everything.
good food. Yeah, exactly, which is
Yeah.
definitely the priority, obviously. But we also want to make sure that that information is available.
Yeah. And this is where something like anonymous reporting, a poster that says, if you see something, say something, here's an anonymous hotline or an anonymous place that you can share this information. This is sort of a prime example of where that comes in handy, because retaliation is illegal either way, but giving employees sort of that space to sort of be able to say something anonymously that you can then sort of take that information and investigate, it might make it so that things get raised sooner and it's not just a bombshell someone drops when they're leaving the company.
Yeah, we definitely don't want it to propagate
Yeah.
continuously, especially in something like that. And this is financial, in any areas of the restaurant or any of our locations. We don't want
Yeah.
that to continue, and we definitely want them to feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's half the battle. I think that's kind of like part of the thing, with HR, is sometimes there's a reputation, deserved or not, right? Depending on what someone's past experience might be with other HR people, where, it's all we need and want is for employees to come to us with information before it blows up, right? Because it's a lot easier to fix a small problem than to clean up a big mess. But like the tools, the mechanisms have to be there for that to happen. And, it always kind of gets me thinking. It's funny because, believe it or not, we're actually at time. And I warned you I was going to ask you this question. So conveniently it segues into it. But so like, all we need and want is employees to feel comfortable coming to us, especially when there are real issues, right? Sometimes there are different perceptions around HR that might prevent people from doing that. So, in thinking about that, what's one assumption about HR that you think needs to be challenged?
Absolutely. And everybody, it seems that I see comments that HR is only from the corporate perspective. They're only thinking about what's better for the company and not for the employees. And that's not true. We look at from both sides. So we definitely look from the employee side. We need the employees. We need their feedback. We need their communication. We want to work with them. And then but we also work for the company as well. So it's two-sided. But we definitely are a huge proponent of employees speaking up, bringing things to our attention so that we can get those addressed. But we also look at, HR holistically and proactively for the employee. We are offering benefits bureau, things like that help with the employees as well. And so we want to be that person they can speak with. It's almost like, who can I talk to, counseling, things like that. That's what we're here
Yeah.
for. But then we also have to do our due diligence as well from the corporate perspective.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like you could think about it in a restaurant setting. It's like if you're, if you're a server, you're working with customers, it's like, do you work for the restaurant or do you work for the customers? It's like, well, both. I represent the restaurant. We have policies and things that we have to uphold. And I want my customers to have a great experience here. And if both of those things can happen easily, then it's a perfect world, right?
You're exactly right. To us, we feel like the employees are our customers. And so we need to
Yeah.
give them excellent customer service so that they can give excellent customer service to our guests. So if they have an issue with HR or anything like that, we want to make sure that they're comfortable so that they feel comfortable working with our guests as well. So it's definitely a domino effect for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing all your wisdom, your perspective. I really like talking this through with you because I feel like it was like bringing back some of my memories from my last like retail job too. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, Rebecca. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.